In the summer of 1996, the Arveladze family of Tbilisi set out on what should have been a short and joyful hiking trip. They were well prepared, experienced in the outdoors, and full of excitement for the two-day adventure. But somewhere in the high mountains of the Caucasus, in a valley carved by glaciers and rivers, the family disappeared. Not a single trace was found. For more than 2 decades, their case remained one of Georgia's greatest unsolved mysteries. And when the truth finally began to surface, it came from the most unexpected place, inside an abandoned water tunnel, sealed by ice for years. This is the story of the Arveladze family, their disappearance, the desperate search that followed, and the shocking discovery that would only be made decades later. The Arveladzes were a close and respected family in Tbilisi. Levin, 41, was a mathematics teacher. Calm, careful, and always organized, he loved hiking and often took friends and students on small mountain trips. Maya, 38, worked as a pharmacist. She was practical, always prepared, and carried medical supplies whenever they traveled. Nika, their 13-year-old son, had just received a simple film camera from his uncle. He was excited to take photos of landscapes and mountains. Aina, their youngest, was 10. She carried a small tin whistle everywhere she went. The sound of her playing it was something everyone remembered. They weren't rich, but they shared a love of the outdoors. Hiking was their way of escaping the city and spending time together. On July 13, 1996, they packed their bags and left before dawn. Their destination was the Kvarsheli Valley, a remote cirque surrounded by sharp peaks and melting glaciers. The plan was simple: hike up, camp near the glacier for one night, and return the following day by a different shepherd trail. It was the kind of trip they had done before, but this one felt special. It was the start of the children's summer holidays. By the afternoon, they reached the last village where the dirt road ended. They parked their old Lada Niva and shared food with a local shepherd named Zura, who remembered them clearly years later. They were happy, he told investigators. They had strong shoes, good packs, everything they needed. I watched them climb up the trail. They looked ready. That was the last confirmed sighting of the Arveladze family. When the family did not return home by July 15th, Maya's sister contacted authorities. At first, police thought maybe they had extended their trip. But by the next day, the Georgian Alpine Rescue Unit, GARU, was called in. On July 16th, search teams entered the valley. Helicopters circled above, volunteers from mountaineering clubs joined in, and dogs were brought to track scent. On July 17th, the dogs reacted strongly near a collapsed snow bridge over a deep moraine. Rescuers marked the spot. It could have been important. But that same evening, storms swept across the mountains, forcing all teams to retreat. When they returned 2 days later, the landscape had changed. Fresh snow and falling rocks had covered the area. The possible clue was gone. For more than a week, GARU expanded their search. Teams followed ridgelines, roping carefully along cliffs. Others dropped weighted lines into crevasses, hoping for contact. Riverbeds downstream were checked for clothing or equipment. On July 21st, hope rose when a shepherd found a blue scarf tangled in brush. Rescuers rushed to test it, but it turned out to be unrelated. Day after day, the valley gave nothing back. No tent, no backpack, no camera, just silence. By July 25th, officials faced a painful decision. After almost 2 weeks, they declared survival chances nearly zero. The official operation was scaled down. Families and locals begged them to continue, but resources were stretched thin. In Tbilisi, news of the disappearance spread quickly. The Arveladze family had been well known in their community. Hundreds attended vigils and prayers. For months, volunteers kept searching, but nothing was ever found. The only thing left was questions and stories. Some villagers believed the family had been swallowed by the glacier, buried forever in ice. Others whispered about hidden military tunnels in the mountains, suggesting the family had stumbled into something forbidden. But the truth was simpler and far more tragic. The mountains themselves had taken them. The case never disappeared completely. Over the years, new clues surfaced, but each one collapsed under investigation. In 2003, a tourist found an old camera near the glacier, but it belonged to Czech hikers, not the Arvaladzes. In 2008, a boot washed downriver, but tests could not confirm it was connected. Every rumor brought hope, then disappointment. Meanwhile, the glacier continued to retreat. Locals noticed new sinkholes, deep cracks, and strange roaring sounds from underground streams. Some said these were places where the missing family had fallen, their remains carried into secret ice tunnels. By the late 2010s, the story of the Arveladze family had become part of local legend. Parents would warn children, the mountain keeps what it wants. For more than 25 years, the fate of the Arveladze family remained frozen in uncertainty. No one knew what had happened after that cheerful wave goodbye in 1996. But in 2022, the mountains would finally give back their secret. And what came out of the ice was something no one was prepared to see. After the summer of 1996, the Kvarshvili Valley returned to silence. Tourists rarely came there, and shepherds avoided the higher passes where the Arveladze family had last been seen. For the families in Tbilisi, the pain was unbearable. Every birthday, every holiday, the absence grew heavier. Maya's sister kept their apartment key, never changing the locks. She told reporters years later, it was like they had just stepped out and might come back at any moment. But as months turned into years, that hope became harder to hold. Although the official rescue had ended, volunteers kept returning. In 1997, a small group of climbers spent 3 weeks in the valley, lowering themselves into dangerous crevasses with ropes. They found nothing. By 1999, Guru had moved on to other emergencies. Funding was scarce, and they could not dedicate more resources to a case that seemed hopeless. Yet the Arveladze mystery refused to disappear. Each new season, as the glacier melted a little more, rumors began again. A hiker saw a scrap of red fabric. A shepherd claimed to hear a whistle in the night. A fisherman swore he found bones along the riverbed. But whenever rescuers checked, there was nothing. Over time, the valley gained a reputation. Locals began to call one gorge the Silent Pass, saying it swallowed voices. Some even believed the mountains were cursed, that anyone who entered without respect would be taken. Children whispered about the sound of Aina's tin whistle echoing across the valley on certain nights. Older villagers told travelers, do not camp near the glacier. The family is still there, wandering. These tales were born from grief, but they gave the tragedy a ghostly layer. The Arveladzes were no longer just missing people, they had become shadows in the mountain's memory. Through the 2000s, occasional discoveries kept the story alive. In 2001, a tourist reported seeing a child's shoe high above the valley. Teams climbed to check, but found only a shepherd's discarded boot. In 2003, the old camera incident made headlines, but it turned out to belong to Czech mountaineers. In 2008, floods washed debris downstream, including a leather boot, but forensic tests were inconclusive. Each time, the Arveladze relatives were forced through the same painful cycle: hope, attention, disappointment. By the late 2010s, many believed the truth would never be known. The glacier itself was shrinking. Where once thick ice had stretched down into the valley, only broken slabs and muddy streams remained. Scientists documented new sinkholes, some as deep as 30 meters, opening where the ice collapsed. Villagers noticed strange roaring noises underground, like rivers echoing in hidden tunnels. They believed the mountain was restless, that it was shifting, breaking, and revealing what it had hidden for decades. One shepherd, David, later told journalists, I avoided that area. You could feel the earth was hollow beneath your feet, like walking on a drum. In 2021, researchers from Tbilisi University came to study the glacier's retreat. They were mapping underground water routes when they noticed something unusual, a narrow opening at the base of the moraine, half blocked with ice and rubble. At first, they thought it was a natural drainage tunnel, but the bricks on one side told another story. It had been reinforced by human hands. The team marked the site but didn't enter. The structure looked unstable and snow was falling heavily. They planned to return the following summer. That decision would change everything. In May 2022, after a warmer than usual spring, a sinkhole opened directly in front of the Seine-blocked passage. Water roared out, clearing mud and stone. For the first time, rescuers and scientists could see inside. It wasn't just a natural tunnel. It was part of an abandoned water diversion system built in the Soviet era to guide glacial melt into reservoirs. The project had been abandoned decades earlier, left to collapse under ice. But now, with the glacier shrinking, the entrance was visible again. When rescuers entered carefully, with ropes and helmets, they found rusted pipes, broken ladders, and deep chambers filled with icy water. It was dangerous, unstable, and echoing with rushing currents. But that wasn't all. Inside, on a ledge, above the water, they found the first object, a bent aluminum cooking pot. The kind families carried on camping trips in the 1990s. Then, deeper in the tunnel, a rescuer's headlamp caught something else, fabric wedged between stone and ice. It was a child's jacket, faded and torn. The team stopped. They marked the site, took photos, and retreated. A full investigation was called immediately. News spread fast. For the first time in 26 years, there was concrete evidence linked to the Arveladze family. Media crews rushed to the village. Locals crowded near the valley, whispering that the mountain was finally giving up its dead. By June 2022, a joint operation was launched between GARU scientists and forensic experts. The mission: to carefully excavate the tunnel and recover anything inside. The work was slow and terrifying. Ice shifted constantly. Water levels rose. Without warning, rescuers worked in short shifts, always fearing collapse. Yet piece by piece, they uncovered more items: a crushed backpack with torn straps, a pair of rusted cooking utensils, and then, unmistakably, human remains. In July 2022, after weeks of careful work, the rescue team managed to push deeper into the old Soviet tunnel. What they found was heartbreaking. On a sloping shelf of rock, half buried in ice, they uncovered the skeletal remains of 2 adults and 2 children. The family had been together until the end. Nearby were fragments of clothing, a patterned scarf that matched photos of Maya, a faded red strap from a child's satchel, and a broken watch, frozen at 3:18. Though no one could say whether it marked the exact time of disaster, forensic experts confirmed the remains belonged to the Arveladze family. After 26 years, the search was finally over. The best theory, built from evidence, was this: on the second day of their hike in 1996, the Arveladzes had wandered too close to the glacier's edge. A snow bridge may have collapsed beneath them, plunging them into a hollow cavity. Instead of falling into an open crevasse, they had landed in part of the unfinished diversion tunnel system, buried beneath ice and rubble. The tunnel was unstable and dark, but it provided some protection from the cold wind above. The family probably tried to survive there, hoping rescuers would find them. The cooking pot, the satchel, and the scattered fabric suggested they attempted to set up a small camp. But water from melting ice filled the chamber. With no way out and temperatures near freezing, they would not have lasted long. Among the items recovered was a rusted metal ladder, half collapsed. Marks on the rock suggested the father, David, had tried to climb upward, perhaps searching for an exit. There were scratches on the tunnel walls, too shallow to be animal-made. Investigators believe these may have been from attempts to carve messages, or simply desperate efforts to hold on. The position of the remains was also telling. Maya was found beside the children, as if she had tried to shield them. David lay just a few feet away, near the ladder. The scene painted a quiet but devastating picture. A family trapped, fighting against impossible odds, together until the end. When the findings were announced, Georgia was shaken. Newspapers that once ran rumors and myths now carried solemn headlines. The Arveladzes found at last. Vigils were held in Tbilisi. Strangers left flowers outside the family's old apartment block. Survivors from the original 1996 search team attended ceremonies, some breaking down in tears as they spoke of closure after decades of guilt. For Maya's sister, the discovery was bittersweet. She told a reporter, "We prayed they would come home." Now in a way, they have. Even with the remains recovered, many questions remain unanswered. Some villagers still believe the family didn't fall by accident. They argue the old Soviet tunnels were known, though rarely spoken of. Could the family have stumbled into an opening left unsealed and become victims of negligence? Others wonder if the tunnels were deliberately hidden. Old maps from the 1970s showed planned water systems that were never completed. Were the Arveladzes the first, or just the only, to be discovered? And then there are the legends. Herders in the valley claim that on quiet nights, even after 2022, they still hear the sound of a tin whistle drifting from the glacier's edge. Rational minds dismiss it as wind whistling through broken pipes. But for many, it's a reminder that not all mysteries can be fully explained. Forensic evidence gave closure, but it also deepened the tragedy. Experts believe the family may have survived for several hours, perhaps even a full day, before succumbing to cold and exhaustion. That means while hundreds searched the surface in 1996, the family could have been alive just a few meters beneath, waiting for help that never came. This realization haunts rescuers to this day. One Garou member admitted, "We walked over that area dozens of times. They were right there, but the mountain hid them." Today, the Kvarshali Valley is no longer ignored. Warning signs mark unstable areas, and the government has restricted access to the abandoned tunnels. The case has also become a training example for modern rescue teams. The importance of underground mapping, the dangers of abandoned infrastructure, and the persistence of memory data for Georgia's people. However, the Arveladze case is remembered less as a technical failure and more as a story of family love. Even in the most desperate conditions, the parents stayed with their children. Together, they faced the silence of the mountain. More than 2 decades of silence ended with a discovery that was both heartbreaking and inevitable. The Arveladzes were not taken by myth or curse, but by the quiet indifference of nature and forgotten. Tunnels carved by human hands. And yet, in the way their story lingers in whispered legends, in the haunted reputation of the valley, in the whistle said to echo across the ice, the family has become something larger. A reminder that sometimes, the past is never truly buried. Even now, in the shadow of the Karshli Glacier, some say the mountain still remembers.